So, just waiting until my computer sets up here. Want to say hi to everyone who is joining. And if you're coming in on the replay, welcome. I wanted to talk today about circadian rhythm. The reason why, and I mentioned this in the live that we had last week, we talked about the eating window and how by adjusting the eating window, you can make an impact on how much food you burn because you can lengthen the fasting period. And the longer you're in the fasting period, the higher the chances are that you're able to tap into your fat cells, which is really important. And I mentioned in the call last week that I wanted to go a little bit deeper because I have a feeling that there may be a lot of questions out there regarding circadian rhythm and what impact that truly can have on fat loss. There are a number of different opinions about it. There are certainly a lot of experts out there that don't necessarily believe that, it can have an impact on your fat loss. And I am definitely the one who believes that it can. Circadian rhythm, I think, particularly for menopausal women, is so important because, our hormones, our internal biological processes are dictated by, what is happening based on our 24-hour circle. So before I get started and before I go any further, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer Lipscomb, and I help Black menopausal women who have a sweet tooth lose fat on a fully or partly plant-based diet without giving up your favorite desserts if you're trying to lose fat. So this is really important to me because I am postmenopausal. I no longer have a menstrual cycle. I went through the phase of having a lot of changes in my hormones. I was eating a lot of sugar, a lot of processed foods, in fact, and this had an impact on my weight. It also had an impact on my skin. And at this time, I really didn't know what was going on, but I knew that I needed to figure it out. And sort of after investigating and getting medical tests done, I found out that I did have histamine intolerance in addition to the eczema that I had. But, I digress. The most important thing is that as I changed my diet, I eliminated a lot of those things that were affecting my skin. Part of that was dairy, animal fat, so meats and things of this nature, helped me to clear up my skin. I realized that, it wasn't just those types of foods, but it was also in general what my eating behavior was, what my eating habits were, that I was eating a lot of processed foods. So not just meat and dairy, being those foods that were affecting me, with maybe higher cholesterol or with gaining weight because I was having processed meats and things of that nature. But, it had an impact on, how I was behaving around food. So I would eat after work, sit in front of the TV, snack, watch Netflix, and eat ice cream. I would eat chocolate and, cake and, and it's not that I once did that and never do that or have never done that after that. It's just that it was, really, really intensive. And during that time period, I was not aware of it and I wasn't doing anything about it until it escalated and I realized I want to make a change. So by, changing my habits and by learning what kind of behavioral tools I can use or put in place that can, benefit my weight management, I was able to lose fat, and I discovered a lot of things along the way that can actually support that. And part of that is, not only creating the eating window that will help you naturally reduce the amount of calories that you're consuming, also by taking advantage of the fasting period so that you're able to cut into your fat cells, reduce the amount of glucose you have in your blood sugar, and also benefit and with the health impact, but also in terms of the timing of the food that you eat. So not just the eating window, when or how long your eating cycle is, but when you actually eat during the day. That's important. So if we sort of talk about what the circadian rhythm is, it's a 24-hour clock that your body is on, and it's referred to sometimes or often as the sleep wake cycle. And the reason why is because the light, the sunlight, which hits, a mass of nerve cells in the lower part of your brain. There are about 20,000 nerve cells. And they're actually referred to as the master clock. And once the light hits these cells, then these cells trigger or, sort of, uh, let the pineal gland know that it's time to reduce or increase your melatonin. So the pineal gland is responsible for producing or reducing the amount of melatonin that you have in your body. And the melatonin is responsible for drowsiness, for the sleep-wake cycle, basically. And so that's where that 24-hour cycle or the sleep-wake cycle came, because the melatonin, which affects your your drowsiness and your metabolism decreasing, that's affected by the light, and that has an impact on your appetite and your metabolism, how you're able to burn fat. Hi, Julie Hunt. Julie says, I have eaten far too much chocolate, cakes, and biscuits over the Christmas period. Yes. Far too much overindulgence, and now paying the price for it. Julie, thank you so much for being so honest and transparent. I can totally relate to that. Over the Christmas period, for me, it's the same. It's, you go into the celebration and into the holidays, and we're all looking forward to spending time with families. And it's just this time of coming together and celebrating, with family and friends. And there's a lot of food available, a lot of chocolate, a lot of cakes, Christmas cookies, and also a lot of wine. And, it's so easy to indulge. And like I said, and like I always say, I think it's important to spend this time and to celebrate it authentically, and enjoy it, and not necessarily restrict yourself from indulging during this time. Be aware of, the food that you are indulging in. But I wouldn't say to yourself, I'm not going to have any of this at all during the holidays, unless you feel as though you're able to hold through. I think it's more important psychologically for us to support ourselves and to really say that although we realize these foods don't necessarily serve us, that we enjoy them, and to be able to celebrate with these foods with family members and friends is sometimes more important than restricting ourselves for the sake of a few calories. So I totally get it. Been there, done that, and we'll always continue during Easter and during, Thanksgiving and Christmas, indulging in those foods that I thoroughly enjoy. But I know that there are tools that I have that I can apply, that I can implement, that can actually help me recover from overeating. And those tools I have shared in my library of videos on YouTube, but I also mentioned them over and over again. And it's something that I really feel confident about. I'm convicted, I'm convinced about it, that fasting is a tool that you can use that gets you quicker to your results, but does not necessarily have an impact as yo-yo dieting does. Now, I compare the two because yo-yo dieting is the restriction of calories. And by fasting, it's principally the same thing. If you say within a certain period of time you're not going to eat any food, then you're restricting calories. But depending on what method you use, you can either be reducing the amount, so you're still eating, but you're not cutting it completely out, or you do extended fasting where you are, but at the same time, you're getting a benefit from it because you're reducing your blood sugar, which is metabolically very positive. It helps and it impacts your blood sugar very well. When you reduce the amount of blood sugar that you have, then your insulin comes down. And that means that you're less likely to hold on to the fat. You're more likely to tap into your fat cells. And this will not only help you in terms of, diabetes and any other metabolic or chronic diseases, but it also helps you in terms of the mindset. It helps you in terms of self-control. And it gives you more energy. We also talked about last week in the live about the growth factor, which is good for menopausal women because it reverses the effects that aging can have. There are a number of different benefits from it. But what's really good in terms of the fasting is during these times of indulgence, when you go into fasting, you're able to sort of turn back the clock on what you did and detox. So get rid of all of the foods that you indulged on, the impact that they've had on your blood sugar, and just start anew. And you sort of reset your dopamine, your gut microbiome, and also your taste buds so that you are open for more nutrient dense foods rather than the sugar or processed foods that we may have been eating over the holidays. So I totally get you, Julie. Feel welcome to hang around in this community. I am constantly producing and love to produce content on exactly these type of issues. And the majority, or a lot of women in this community are going through the same thing. So you're not alone. I'm right there with you, totally get it, and can share with you the tips that I have and that I use and that I implement in order to sort of get over the hump or kind of get back on track after having indulged. So thank you for sharing that. And Julie continues to say, I know this is off topic, but too much fruit and juicing makes me break out in sweats. Have you found this in your case as a menopausal woman? She also says, I think maybe spiking my blood sugar with fruit. Yeah, I've heard this from a lot of different people. I'm embarrassed to say that I probably don't eat a lot of fresh or raw fruit as maybe others do. A lot of my meals that I eat are a lot of vegetables. So like low calorie vegetables, but also starchy vegetables that have a little bit, higher calorie or moderate amounts of calories, like beans, chickpeas, kidney beans, lentils. I love legumes and these types of vegetables because of how they're able to help me with regulating my blood sugar. They keep me fuller. They also provide a lot of protein. I'm fully plant-based, so I rely on these foods for, a good portion of my protein. I also, as I mentioned, I believe in my last video or one of the videos that I did about protein, that although I do eat a lot of vegetables that have protein, like, the beans and the legumes or, soy products, my favorite is really having either homemade protein powder or protein powder that's natural because of the less amount of calories that's in it compared to the protein content. So as an example, if I were to take, let's say, seitan or some, sort of processed meatballs that are made from soy, because I eat mainly or only plant-based foods, then sometimes I want to have sort of like a meat type or meat alternative food, which is like made primarily of like pea protein or seitan or soy. And, if I have those, depending on the type of ingredients that are in it. It could be that there are a lot of calories in it. There is a good portion of protein, but the calorie content may be higher than what I'm getting back in protein. If I have like a natural protein powder that's made with, whole foods, but it's processed, manufactured and not something I make at home, I am likely to have less calories in that compared to the amount of protein. So I prefer that type of protein. So a lot of my meals are made up or centered around that, that type of, a constellation of food: protein and low calorie vegetables, fiber like cabbage. I love cabbage. Tomatoes and spinach, a lot of those type of foods. When it comes to fruit, I eat bananas a lot in my desserts. I like berries in smoothies or in my desserts, or maybe even with pancakes as a topping, or even mixing it in yogurt. I like apples, but I don't necessarily eat. I don't know what other fruits are there that are available. I know a lot of people, or I know that there are people, or a lot of people out there. I don't necessarily know them, but there are a lot of people out there that eat, a lot of fruits, or they're maybe raw vegan. So the bulk of their diet is consisting of, vegetables or fruits that are raw. So they, do get a lot of vitamins because these ingredients are not processed or cooked or steamed, but they really get the essence of the vitamins from them because these ingredients or these vegetables or fruits are not altered. But that's not my experience per se. I have them here and there, but it doesn't make up a huge part of my diet. So I can't really tell you whether or not that really impacts my blood sugar. I also don't measure my blood sugar. So I don't know if you have a device that you're using that tells you how high your blood sugar peaks after having fruits. But I would say if you notice a considerable difference, to modify your meals in such a way that you reduce the amount of fruits that you have in there, and maybe increase maybe lower calorie or lower glycemic, foods that have a lower glycemic index, so that you're sure to lower the impact that these foods have on your blood sugar, or lower the blood sugar that you have. I don't know if that answered you exactly. You say that, this is off topic, but too much fruit. Yeah, too much fruit definitely and juicy makes you break out and sweat. So I think that you could possibly change that, or maybe reduce the sweating. I know that foods in general can have an impact on your hormones. And, if I have, for example, too much red wine, or too much chocolate, or even too much sugar, then I will also break out in a lot of sweats. I'll have trouble sleeping. I even have, eczema. I've talked about my neurodermatitis. For the most part, it's pretty much under control. But depending on the time of year, the season, what I've been eating, then I will have rashes and breakouts. And certainly coming out of the Christmas holidays, I did have, and still continue to have, some rashes that I'm trying to bring back under control by, modifying my diet. But I can relate to having, sweats or symptoms based on the foods that I have. In your case, it's fruit. So I would consider, again, maybe reducing the amount that you're having so that you can reduce the sweating, and see what kind of impact that has. If your symptoms go down, experiment with it and see what you can do, or what you can replace the fruits with, to see if you can, make that difference. Julie continues on. Thank you for being so thorough. Oh, that's so sweet. I'm very grateful. I eat lots of vegetables, which is great. I grow my own organically, and I'm vegan. That's so good that you grow them organically. And what's great about that is because in this community, please share how you do that. I live sort of on a little bit on the outskirts of the city. We're in Frankfurt in Germany, and it's like maybe a 10-minute ride with the subway to the city. So we're sort of suburb, but not really. It's still kind of part of the city. But we live sort of like in a row house, so we don't have that much of a garden. And I would love to know how to do an urban garden or grow my vegetables organically. I know there's a lot of material out there, but I'm so lazy when it comes to doing that. It's so, in theory, such a great idea, and I would love to do something like that. But I'm the kind of person, I just want to know, like, give me the exact steps, and the best part is if you can maybe condense it and just give me like the quick the quick, like, 1 2 3, so I don't have to spend time trying to figure out like all of the steps. Just make it as simple as possible. So share in the community, like, what your experience has been. That's really good and fits well here, because we want to promote eating more vegetables. We want to promote taking control of our diet, and part of that is even promoting gardening and growing our own vegetables, because organic obviously is more healthy or healthier than getting foods that have lots of pesticides in them. And it's actually a really good experience to have or to be involved in. So definitely share in the community if you wish. And I would love to hear more about that. Glad also that you're fully plant-based or even vegan. So you might not be having, honey and things like that, like maybe other plant-based, because you may be doing it for, the sake of protecting animals, where there are others in the community who are plant-based for other reasons. So, depending on, what your position is, or why you are fully vegan or fully plant-based, then, feel free to share your tips, your strategies, and what things you've done that have worked for you. And you say, yes, chocolate. Chocolate is maybe the answer to what I was saying when I was talking about eating certain foods that may impact the symptoms that you get. The hormones impact our hormones in such a way that we maybe sweat a lot, or that could be maybe what that's an answer to. But if so, I can relate to that. Chocolate, like I said, red wine, a lot of things that have histamine in them, like chocolate and red wine. I know also aging cheeses, which I used to love, and packaged foods. Even soy products have a lot of histamine in it, but I can, as long as I moderate how much I eat of that, then I don't have so much of an impact. But certainly chocolate can impact me. And I'm so glad if I'm able to gain control over the foods that I eat in my diet. So yeah, that's a really good point. So getting back to the circadian rhythm, I wanted to just talk about, just to keep it very simple, the studies that actually support why timing when you eat it can be very important and can be beneficial to each of us. There are 3 different studies that I noted, and depending on where you stand with the idea, it could be that the one or the other is convincing for you, or that you maybe need to explore some more. But let me share them with you so that you kind of get an idea of how the timing of your food can be important for your diet and for losing fat. Okay, so the first study had to do with 8,000 adults. Now, I believe, because these are from notes that I had from videos that I did in the past, in my podcast that I have. But this particular study, I believe this one is mixed. So it's not just women, but also men as well. And they wanted to test how late night eating can impact your weight gain. And what happened was 8,000 adults all ate at night, but there were some who had, higher levels of fat in their blood versus those who ate earlier. So if you have, this number, a large sample size of adults who are eating different types of foods, and those who eat later versus those who eat earlier are the ones that are having higher levels of fat in their blood, then that is obviously demonstrating that because they were eating at a later time period in the day, that their blood sugar contained higher levels of fat because of simply the time in which they ate. Had they had eaten earlier, then it's less likely that they would have had as much fat in their blood than those who did, in fact, refrain from eating later and ate earlier in the day. They also had higher blood sugar, so that's also important. So there was fat in their blood, higher levels of fat in their blood, and they had higher blood sugar. The second study was done in 2013, and this was done mainly with women. And the women in this study, they all ate the same amount of calories, right? But there were women who ate the bulk of their calories at breakfast time. And the other women ate the bulk of their calories later in the day. And those who ate at breakfast time had 2.5 more chances of losing fat than those who ate later in the day. That's phenomenal. So that means those women who ate earlier in the day, they lost fat 2.5 at a rate 2.5 higher or greater than those women who ate later in the day. And this was, for me, a very surprising study because it really showed that depending on when you eat, that your chances, simply your chances of losing fat can be altered regardless of this calories, because in this case, they ate both the same calories, right? So even if you restrict the amount of calories that you have and you're eating later in the day, you're still likely to gain more weight than if you were to have your meal earlier in the day. That was the second study. And the third study was done in 2017, again, focusing on eating late at night. And, that's important because at night, as I mentioned with the circadian rhythms, once the light, the strength of light outside, so the sun hits this mass of cells at the bottom of the brain, these 20,000 nerve cells, then they trigger the pineal to react, either to produce or to reduce the amount of melatonin. And once melatonin is released, then it starts to shut down the body so that your body or your metabolism starts to decrease, and you're less likely to break down the food in your blood. So when melatonin, in other words, is high, then your metabolism is low, your body's drowsy, you're ready to prepare for going to sleep. And when your melatonin is low, then that means, the sun is starting to rise, the light is going into your, brain, it's triggering the pineal gland, and it's saying, okay, reduce the amount of melatonin. So once the melatonin reduces, then you start to wake up and your metabolism starts to rev back up again. And you're, more likely to or ready to have, more ability to break down the food in your blood system. So eating late at night when the body releases melatonin, that means your metabolism shuts down, then you're going to have obviously it's going to be harder for you to break down the food. But in this study, it says that there was a group of individuals, and it did not matter the type of food that they ate or the amount of food that they had. So it could have been high calorie, it could have been low calorie, it could have been sweets, or it could have been even vegetables or legumes or what have you. So not necessarily processed foods, but maybe even whole foods. So regardless of the type of food and also the volume. So they could have had even less amounts of food compared to greater amounts. And it did not even matter the activity level of the people who were involved in this study. So they could have been very, very active. not just sitting at the desk all day working, but also, up and about, maybe, on, the trading floor, or, working in a store where you're sort of stocking or walking around or going back and forth, or even, with exercising. You might be, someone who's jogging a lot, or who's very active, lifting weights or exercising, more than the next person. But regardless of your activity level, regardless of the amount of food that you ate, and regardless the type of food you ate, that when you ate at night, that your body was more likely to hold on to fat, to gain weight, compared to those who didn't and who ate earlier in the day. So all of the food they ate was eaten before the melatonin actually kicked in. This is phenomenal. That was the third study. So based on these studies that were done with adults, that were done with people, and not necessarily animals, but real world environments, it shows and demonstrates that depending on when you eat during the day, that it can have an impact on how much your body holds onto fat, on how much blood sugar, or how high your blood sugar is, or how much fat is actually in your blood sugar. So this is important in terms of timing when you have your food. So going back to what I said in the way beginning, there are a lot of people out there who don't believe that when you time your food is important. But for menopausal women, knowing that the cards are stacked against us because our estrogen has gone down, so we're really having to work against a lot of, the things that we had to work against when we were in our 20s and 30s. At that time, if we exercised, after having a maybe high calorie meal, we were more likely to break it down and for it not to have so much of an impact on us because our estrogen levels were higher. But now that our estrogen levels go down, we know that that impacts our insulin, that we're more likely to be insulin resistant. And that means that we hold on to fat much more. And in this case, as menopausal women, whether we're perimenopausal, menopausal, or postmenopausal, our estrogen is fluctuating. So we want to do all that we can in order to counteract the impact that it can have on our insulin, on our blood sugar, on whether or not we are able to break down the food. And having an eating window is certainly key and important as a tool, but we also want to ensure that we're being mindful of when we eat. So that means we want to consider having our eating window placed throughout the day so that we have enough time between our last meal and the time that melatonin kicks in. And we know that melatonin actually starts to produce in our pineal gland once the strength of the light starts to go down. It reduces and has an impact on those 20,000 nerve cells, and they trigger our pineal gland then to produce the melatonin. Then our metabolism starts to shut down and we're less likely to break down the food. So we want to make sure that we have enough of a gap in between our last meal and when the melatonin starts to kick in. And I would say really around between 4 and 6 o'clock is when you can start to place your last meal. Even as late as 8, I think that's kind of, sort of pushing it. But for those who are doing the intermittent fasting and they want to sort of practice with the 12-8, based on the 16-8 cycle, then I can see, stopping with dinner or stopping with breakfast, not having breakfast at all, skipping that, and then starting with lunch and then eating until dinner. The wider your eating window, then the more likely you're able to have 3 or 4 meals, which means that if they're nutrient dense and they contain protein, each of them, then you've hit your protein, or more likely to hit your protein requirements because you have enough protein opportunity within 3 or 4 meals than if your eating window was smaller and you would have, less meals within that time. So certainly 12-8 is a great start. And that's actually the time frame which I ate and I set for my eating window when I first started with intermittent fasting, and it worked like a charm. I lost weight and I lost it effectively and quickly over a short period of time. I would say between 6 to 8 weeks, I lost a significant amount of weight, between 15 and 20 kilograms, which I thought was phenomenal at the time because although I was exercising regularly, it did not, just the exercise alone, have as much of an impact on my weight loss as the eating window being implemented along with the exercises. So I always think and I'm convinced that eating and your eating habits has the most impact on your weight management than exercising. Exercising to me is a supplement. It's maybe 20% of the formula, but 80% is really what you can do around eating that can have an impact on, how much you're able, to lose, how much how long your fasting window is, or how many hours it is, and therefore, you're more likely and quicker to tap into your fat cells when you place your food intake timeline. According to my free mini fat loss course, I have the start of the timeline and the end, and that end is your last meal. And the time between your last meal and when you actually go to bed is key. So on that note, I just sort of want to, touch upon that. You may have questions and you may have some thoughts, maybe not now, maybe later when you start to, consider whether or not shifting your eating window based on your circadian rhythm will impact your fat loss. Truly experiment with it because it really can. And based on these studies, I think it's very important to consider them, explore them, and implement it in order to, reach your fat loss goals much quicker. It can have a much greater impact than you think. Sometimes we plateau and we're not quite sure what we can do to make a difference. And some of the tools we don't even consider because we think how unlikely it can be because of other influencers out there that have not explored it, or they don't think that these types of tools can be effective. But you really are the CEO of your health, and you I think are in a much better position to know what types of tools can be effective for you. And it's good to really test them, to really explore them and find out, what types of strategies are the most effective for you. So on that note, I'm just going to check. Julie Hunt says, that is very interesting. I will switch the bulk of my calories early in the day. Thank you. I thank you for your transparency, for sharing, and for engaging in the chat. Definitely, check it out, see whether or not it is helpful. I'd love to find out about your results, share with the group whether or not changing the time of your last meal has or can affect your fat loss. And let us all know. Share your comments and inform us whether or not it has worked for you. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and close the call. Thank you all for joining. And if you're coming in on the replay, then feel free to leave comments if you wish. I will certainly answer them once they come through. And even if you're interested in finding out about other types of tools that menopausal women can use who are trying to lose fat on a plant-based diet, but without giving up dessert, throw those in there as well. I'll be happy to address any topics that you may have of concern. And I think that's all for now. I'm so happy that you're listening in, whether now or on the replay, and I will check back with you all again next week. Take care and have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.